base and rover hardware quick review. So anytime you've got 2 of these units on a job site, but only, let's say, like one data collector like this is our typical base and rover connection. So base, stationary, receives corrections, is going to broadcast that out to a rover via radio. Anytime maybe you're working without a base because you've got, you're able to be on the internet consistently and have access to a VRS network, or you're planning on using Trimble's RTX network, you would only have, this piece here. You wouldn't necessarily need that base. But not having to be online, getting the most accuracy out of GNSS, the base and rover combo can be helpful for that. So just going over quickly what we have, like the actual receiver itself, I've got an antenna threaded onto the bottom. Just important to note, the actual radio, type broadcasting you're doing, if it's 900, if it's 450, if you're going back and forth between the two, there are different antenna accessories to make sure you're broadcasting correctly. So just make sure that that's proper. I've got the 780 in this example on a quick release. This is great for any sort of fixed base position. You could kind of like leave everything as is except the receiver, get it to a dry, safe position at the end of the workday, but nice and easier with the release here. I've got it attached to a 1-foot extension, a tri-brac, and a tri-brac adapter. That way I can get level over a point. If I were to take the 780 where it attaches right here and attach it to just the tripod, I'm not going to have enough space there due to the antenna. That 5/8-11 thread, this is the same exact tripod we use with our RTS series. It's not going to physically fit. So we'll need some sort of, adapter and an extension to give it some space. We do have simpler accessories than the formal tri-brac and adapter if you just want a more simple disc, if we're not overly concerned about being actually being able to position over a known point. That's our base standard setup. Over to the rovered standard setup, we've got a traditional, layout rod and bipod here. This is the exact same layout rod I typically use with an RTS. We do have a fixed GNSS rod, but kind of, interchangeable as far as like which one you have access to. But just important to note again, on your rover, you have an antenna. That antenna matches your base's antenna, just because you're going to make sure you're communicating over the same radio. And in this example, where I've got my data collector facing me, that's where I have like all of the emblems and the icons on the back of the rover. They're going to be facing me as well, just to make sure that all my directionals are going to line up. If I have, my rover sort of facing the other way, I might see my directionals kind of working counterintuitively to the way I'm working. But this is about it for as like the actual base and rover setup. Rover setup, I might be doing just this here. The quick release, that's an accessory I could use with the rover, but anytime I'm using tilt compensation, so not necessarily having to level out my rod with every point, it does recommend staying away from the actual quick release for that workflow.